Since Max Verstappen is on the verge of getting his third world title in a row, I thought it would be a good idea to have a look at the 2022 World Champion model, the Red Bull RB18. This version I have here is the Spark 118 Resin model based on the Japanese Grand Prix, the race in which Max clinched the title by winning it by a huge margin over the rest of the field. It was released just recently, so let's have a look at what Spark has made of it.
Well done, mate, you've won it. You see the checkered flag, well done.
Nice race at the end too. Nice few laps in the wet.
The 2022 Japanese Grand Prix was maybe a bit of an omen of what was going to come in 2023. Max obliterated the field that day in a rain-shorted race, finishing a whopping 27 seconds ahead of his Red Bull teammate Checo Perez, and this all in just 28 laps. By winning the race, Verstappen ensured his claim on the title, his second one in succession. Even though the 2022 season started out promisingly with Ferrari looking to be at least on par with Red Bull, the end of the season tailed off a bit, partly due to Ferrari and Leclerc being too erratic to mount a real challenge for the title. That being said, Max of course also drove exceptionally well, especially his wins in Hungary and Belgium from lower grid positions were mighty impressive. Once Red Bull got their cards together, there was no stopping them anymore. This wave of dominance got even bigger in 2023, and it quickly became apparent it was a matter of when, not if, that Max and Red Bull would win yet another title. By winning his second consecutive world title in Suzuka in 2022, he amusingly followed in the footsteps of the previous Red Bull world champion, Sebastian Vettel, who also won his first world title in Abu Dhabi and his second one in Japan. Spark now have recently released the 118th version of Max Verstappen's Red Bull RB18 from the 2022 Japanese Grand Prix. They had already released early season versions already, and lots more different versions will be coming out soon or are already out now. The Japanese Grand Prix is the most special one, of course, as this was the race in which he clinched the seemingly inevitable World Championship. This model comes on intermediate tires and both Parc Fermé number 1 boards and the pit board as well. Minichamps have also released 3 different versions from this race. First out was the Max Verstappen Web Store Special. This one came out with a standing figurine and the pit board. For this specific version, Minichamps also did add the special blue markings on the sidewalls of the tires as an added bonus. The Webshop edition is limited to 4,600 pieces and is edition 104 already of their running collection. Normally I always buy these webshop editions, but for once I waited and got the Spark model instead. The reason for that will become clear later on in the video. Minichamps then have also released a special CK Modelcars version 2. This version is very different from the official webshop edition. It comes in a different style of packaging for starters. The figurine here is also a normal one sitting in the car. And the tires also don't have the extra markings on the sidewalls like the webshop edition. The same pitboard is included with the model though. Then they will also release a normal version, let's say, of this car themselves. It will be the exact same model as the CK Special, just in the standard Minichamps windowed packaging. The Spark model then is set in the new style packaging they had released a year earlier. And this has changed just a little bit though. There is one less window in it on the side compared to the first new iteration of the box. The way the protective mousse surrounds the model is also much better. They are now easier to remove and thus the model is easier to remove from the box as well. These Spark models come with a display case which explains the price difference a bit with the Minichamps versions. So around 199 for the Spark versus 165 for the Minichamps. The way the display case is packaged is pretty nice. There's plastic wrapped around it and 2 straps to be able to lift the model out of the lower box part. 4 rubber corner pieces then protect the case and prevent it from rubbing onto the base. That base then is the regular grey wooden one most Spark F1 118th models are sat on. Taped to the base are 2 small plastic bags with both the pitboard and the Parc Fermé boards in them. The display case adds something extra, it gives the model a bit more of a premium feel. But for me personally though, this is a bit of an unnecessary extra cost, as I don't display my models in a case, but as I said, it does look very much like a proper quality model like that. So after looking at the model a bit from all angles, I went to see if there were things that I think could be improved. And unsurprisingly, there were a few things that I found that I would like to see different in the future if possible. Well, first and foremost, there is the rear wing. I mean, the wing is actually quite simple, but for some reason Spark decided it would be too much work to cut out the slit in the upper flaps. To be fair, the Mini Champs model also doesn't have this cut in the wing. I just don't understand Spark's logic when you see they do cut out all of the many planes in the front wing. And you would think doing it the other way around would make more sense, cutting out one big opening instead of all these smaller ones. Another thing missing on the rear wing are the small FIA mandated dots to measure the amount of wing flex, and this is something that is featured on the Mini Champs model though. Then there is the steering wheel, and I find it quite contradictory that Spark, which usually has better finer details compared to Mini Champs, still uses a generic steering wheel. Mini Champs at least tries to replicate the real thing, and I can only applaud the effort even though the execution is not always perfect. But this is an area where Spark need to concentrate on next, I think. Another issue I have with this model are the tires. I mean, they don't look bad, don't get me wrong, but Mini Champs also use these textured sidewalls with these extra details on them, like all of these lines on them. Spark's tire sidewalls are still as smooth as a baby's buttocks. It's not that the tires on the Spark model don't look good, but it would just look so much better with this tiny added detail. A smaller point of criticism on the tires are the Pirelli branded arches. I think they just look a tad too thick on the Spark models compared to the real car. Finally then, the decals still prove to be a bit problematic for Spark. As with the previous Red Bull models, the decals they use are a bit too thick and don't blend in well into the matte dark blue paint they use. You can clearly see some of the outlines of the decals, which in some areas is pretty bad unfortunately. Luckily it's a bit better than it used to be on this model, but I hope they will keep improving this area. Luckily I think the positives do make up for all these cons. As I said, the packaging and the display case give the model a more premium look. I like the fact they added these small extras like the Parc Fermé number 1 board and the pit board, although me personally I don't care too much about all of these boards, but I'm sure a lot of collectors do like these additions. Granted, the Mini Champs model also comes with a pit board, but I don't think I've ever seen one with the BWT Parc Fermé branded boards. The detail on the front wing is much better on the Spark model with all the cutout cascades of course. All of these slot gap separators look much more refined as well. The side view of the wing end plate looks much better too then of course, as the cuts run through on the bottom of the end plates. The finer parts on the top of the tub then are much more refined as well. On the Mini Champs all these aerials and the pitot tube are in much thicker plastic as opposed to these fine metal parts on the Spark model. The figurine details then are better too on the Spark. The helmet of the driver actually has a clear visor, as that particular race was ran in rainy conditions and then they usually use clear visors. There even is a small see-through plastic chin spoiler added to the helmet, which is a very impressive small detail. The helmet of the figurine on the Mini Champs then has the ugly brown visor, as they couldn't use the new golden foil one, as Max didn't use a tinted visor during that race, even though the gold one is not very good either, I have to say. Also on the standing figurine of the Fan Shop edition, Max had his visor open when he stood on the car celebrating his victory and the title, so although the effort is good, it's not really very accurate either. The belts too look so much better on the Spark model. At least here they use real photo-etched metallic parts, and the belts are 3D belts, not just simple decals like on the Mini Champs. The Fan Shop edition is even worse in that regard, with belt decals just on a cheap plastic looking seat, and the seat also has a big gaping hole at the back, just like it had on the 2021 model. The details of the floor are better too, I think, on the Spark model. It's a bit less shiny than on the Mini Champs, and it's a bit more finely detailed, I think, like this little strengthening rod here on the floor edge in front of the rear wheels. The rear suspension too is much more refined, and the same can be said for the whole rear of the model. The exhaust, the crash structure just all look better on the Spark model. The level of detail is just a bit higher. The LED rear lights in the end plates are also featured on the Spark and are missing on the Mini Champs. So to conclude, I think this Spark model is slightly better than the Mini Champs versions for all the reasons that I stated. Sure, it has some areas that could be improved, but some of these can actually easily be rectified by yourself. On my model, for instance, I added the tire sidewall markings that I usually add to my models anyways. The ones on the webshop Mini Champs version are very good, but still lack the small barcode and the extra writing on it as well. The missing dots on the rear wing I then added myself too. Things like the generic steering wheel and the textured tire sidewalls I cannot change, however, but I mean, that's okay. The reason, by the way, I for once didn't buy the webshop model is because I wanted to change it up a bit and try the other brand instead. I also don't think that the standing figurine adds too much to the model car, certainly not when it kinda exposes the lack of detail inside the cockpit then. In the end, I'm happy with the model that I chose, regardless of how it stacks up against the Mini Champs. I'm sure I would have liked that one too, for different reasons then. What is certain though is that this Spark model is pretty good. Its overall look is spot on, I think. The smaller details are much more refined and actually look very nice as well. And the things that aren't that good, well, I hope Spark does something about these very small issues, but I mean, they've been quite keen on improving their models based on customers' feedback, so that bodes well for the future Spark releases. So now I would like to ask you, what model would you choose for yourself? Do you prefer the finer small details of the Spark model, or is the Mini Champs more your thing, and why? Let me know in the comments below. That'll be it then for this review video. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and check out the other content as well. Again, thanks for the support and I hope to see you soon. Take care. Bye bye.